This message is for the fake woke people. This is part 2 of my talk about fake woke people. As I mentioned before, fake woke people are out there claiming to be woke, and actually what they're doing is they're trying to develop a following for whatever belief they have. They're false prophets. So you got to be careful. And there are certain things I told you to look for if you're looking at someone who claims to be woke, certain characteristics that you're looking for. So you got to be careful with that. But the one thing about fake woke people I notice is that, like I said before, they have the gift of gab. They have the ability to talk their way into or out of anything. So what I did notice with a lot of them, the ones that, claiming universal purpose, and universal purpose is real, but a lot of them claim they have one, and claim, they know so much about the stars and the cosmos and the universe. And there's some of us out here who actually have that knowledge, but I'm talking about the fake woke people. They'll give you all the information that you could basically just Google. And what they'll do is once you have an intimate one-on-one conversation with them, you find out what they're really about. You find out that these people, like I mentioned before, are not only a mess on paper, but some additional things include the fact that, number one, they don't go to get regular checkups. I mean, they start talking about the pharmaceutical system we know is corrupt, but we start talking about, all the politics behind the healthcare system as an excuse for why they won't get regular checkups. They use all the politics behind the political system and the government system as an excuse for not, getting and keeping a regular job. They have an explanation for that. It's always the government's fault. It's always the healthcare system's fault. It's always, some big, huge entity's fault as to why they stand on their position. And don't get me wrong, a lot of these institutions are flawed, but they're run by man, and man is flawed. But the thing is if you're trying to take care of yourself, there are certain basic things that you need to do. They go around saying, physician, heal thyself. Okay, fine, If you're a physician, heal yourself. But if you're not a physician, you need to go to the doctor. Okay? So, they don't take care of themselves, you can tell. And more than likely, they probably have some type of addiction. They're probably chain smokers, or drink too much, or eat too much. They have some form of addiction. And usually those thought processes fuel their addiction. Their desire for power, as they take on more responsibility, they become more addicted. Let me give you a case in point of a fake woke person. You guys probably heard of them. But the Jamestown, Guyana situation back in, 1980 or 1981, I remember, because CBS used to do these little news breaks, breaking news things, where they would cut into the middle of a show with, breaking news. I mean, they still do it now, but not so much. And I remember them showing the aerial footage, the helicopter footage, and the people walking around and just bodies all over the ground because the people drank the Kool-Aid. See, that's where that phrase, don't drink the Kool-Aid, come from. A lot of you younger people didn't understand where that phrase came from. It was just a cute little phrase, and y'all just went ahead and jumped on it, but you didn't realize where the story came from. When they say don't drink the Kool-Aid, that's what it was about, because it was about Jim Jones, who was power hungry, who ran a cult. And he developed this community out in the middle of Guyana, and he had nearly 1,000 people follow him out there. And but he was highly addicted to opioids and cocaine and heroin and everything else. But he had so many people under his control, and it got to the point where it just took over his brain to the point, and I think he had some health problems as well. So that was his excuse for also using the drugs. So drugs and being power hungry just don't mix, because that's a recipe for disaster. And eventually, at some point, they used to have rehearsals on how they would do mass suicides, because how you had these people convinced that the outside world was so horrible. And so they would have rehearsals on how they were going to drink this poison Kool-Aid, and everybody was just going to die because there was this special place over on the other side and blah, blah, blah. And eventually it did happen. You know, he made whatever announcement that he needed to make, and everybody gathered and they started drinking the Kool-Aid. And, you know, they did it in phases. I think the children had to go first and then the parents. It was just really weird. It just went according to age groups and all that stuff. And 918 people drank that Kool-Aid and died. So that's where they get the phrase, don't drink the Kool-Aid. So for those of you who didn't know that or weren't alive when that happened, that's where the phrase came from. It came from the Guyana tragedy. Look it up. Jim Jones, I believe it happened in 1981 or 1980, I'm not sure. I was a little kid at the time, but I remember seeing the breaking news on television. And you could just see nothing but bodies all over the place. And it was just a horrible thing. There were some people that survived, but a lot of them don't speak of it because, you know, it's just so traumatic and they just want to forget the whole thing. And of course, Jones himself, he wound up dead, but it was because of a gunshot wound. It had nothing to do with the Kool-Aid. And then there's still a question to this day as to how he died. They want to say it was suicide, but then they want to say that, you know, the government came in and shot him. Or they want to say that it was rebels because, you know, there was still some political conflict going on in Guyana during that time. So that's a mystery as to how that happened. And he does have some children that he fathered, but they don't speak very much either. You know, trauma is just too big. And, you know, you have to understand sometimes people go through traumatic experience so badly that they would just rather put the whole thing out their mind and they don't speak on these issues. Even when people ask them, they could offer them money in the whole 9 yards. But if they don't want to revisit it, they're not going to revisit it. And, you know, and that's their choice. But, I mean, that's a classic case of somebody who claimed to be fake woke and led a whole bunch of people to their death. So when they say don't drink the Kool-Aid, that's where they came from. But a lot of fake woke people, they just have extreme notions as to how to deal with just regular, simple decisions. They have extreme ideas on how to deal with simple things. Like, you know, I mean, you're supposed to go to the dentist twice a year. You know, and some people, you're walking around with, you know, you've been having a toothache for 3 months. Every single day for 3 months, you've been having toothaches. You know, you got rotten teeth in your mouth. And that's causing you pain constantly. And you won't go to the dentist. Okay, well, let all your teeth fall out. And when your teeth fall out, guess what you're going to have to do? You're going to have to go to the dentist to get the dentures. Because how are you going to eat? You got people, you might have pain in your side or something like that. You claim you don't want to go to the doctor. The fake woke people will go around and say, oh, I can't go. I don't believe in going to the doctor. I don't believe in going to the doctor. Okay, well, turn around and go outside and get in an accident. Guess where they're going to take you? To the hospital. Guess who's going to treat your broken bones? To a doctor. So you're going to wind up seeing a doctor at some point. Well, I'll wait till that time comes. Well, you know what? You go ahead and wait. And then by the time you go to the doctor, it's going to be way too late. I know people, and this just doesn't apply to older people either, because I've heard a lot of that from older people, but I've run into some people, I mean people that are 35, 40 years old, 30 years old, running around with this philosophy, you know, talking about how spiritually woke they are, but they won't go for a checkup. I mean, these are common sense things. Common sense things. I mean, if you want to promote your agenda, you got to be here to do it. So, you know, it's just, you know, if you come across somebody who claims they're spiritually woke, and again, as I stated before, you turn around and you look into their background and you start talking to them and they start talking that nonsense about, oh, well, I don't believe in doctors, that's a red flag. Because unless they are a doctor, they're not in any position to say anything like that. You get hooked up with them, and then you find out within a short period of time that they got some kind of disease or something like that that requires a whole lot of attention, and it took too long to go see a doctor. You know, that's just reckless behavior. That's absolutely reckless behavior. That's not somebody who's woke. That's somebody who's just downright reckless, and reckless ain't good. Or you come across someone who says, oh, well, I don't, the system, this, the government this, the government that, the government this, the government that. These are the people that blame every single society problem that we have on the government. Everything. The government. Don't get me wrong. Government has a certain amount of responsibility, and no, they're not doing everything that they're supposed to do in society, but they're not the sole reason. But every time you talk to these so-called people, they're anti-government. They'll turn around and say government, government, government. But guess what? When it was time for those PPP loans to go out for their little corporation that they had, they took that money and they cashed those stimulus checks. So don't come to me talking about government this and government that, okay? I hit, I address that real quick when I talk to people, because I notice that a lot of people, especially the ones that are on fixed income, I notice a lot of them, the first thing, they'll be the first ones to complain about the government, the government, the government. Okay, all right. You hate the government so bad and they're so horrible. You know what? When it's time for you to collect that disability or that pension every single month from the government, send the money back. I tell people all the time, if government is so horrible and they're the fault of everything, send that money back that you get every month. Return the stimulus checks that they passed out. Return the PPP loan money. Return your student loan your student loan money. Return your federal grants, because it came from the government. You got to be careful of these people. These are people who have all this spiritual knowledge, but they'll turn around and say government this and government. But when you start looking in their background, come to find out they took all this PPP loan money and they got all these checks and all these different things from the government. So which one is it? Why would you take some money from something that you didn't believe in? See, when it comes to loving money, people act funny. When it comes to loving money, people act funny. They'll sit there and preach all day about how rotten something is, but when it comes to that money, they'll take it. Fake woke people. Fake woke people. Just saying.